Just before we begin, I wanted to briefly set the expectations for what today's webinar will cover. It is very much a beginner's introduction to social media that will suit anyone who is looking to start using social media, or perhaps once set up some accounts but never did anything more than that. If you have already set up your social media accounts and are using them reasonably regularly, you would perhaps find our webinar next Monday on utilising social media in your firm more useful and suited to your level. There will be more details on that webinar in the follow-up email, but now I would like to hand over to Rebecca, who's going to take you through a beginner's introduction to social media.
Good day, everybody. It's really great to be here again, and wonderful, Will, that you've got such an engaged audience. Thanks very much, everybody, for making the time to be here. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes, the beginner's introduction to social media. Which of these statements do you think is true? Social media is an overhyped, it's full of teenagers who talk rubbish about tuna sandwiches and where they've been, and it has no relevance for my business. Versus, social media is the most exciting free marketing tool for business. Now, of course, I've chosen two extreme points of view here. Both of these situations actually concurrently exist. There are parts of social media that fulfill both of those statements. The point here for those of us who are in business and want to use social for marketing purposes is we need to choose the part of social media that suits us. So what is actually social media? It's a phrase that I'm sure you're familiar with. I define it as a way of sharing useful information to an audience, a group of people, and using bits of software that have been written by business. That's a reasonably broad definition because, of course, you could say, well, email or a list of people in an email is social. But there are some added features of social media that are different from email. The way I see it working is if you imagine a Venn diagram of overlapping circles of influence, the bit that's different about social media is it enables your messages or your ideas to spread beyond the people you personally already know. And that's why it's so powerful. It's a little bit like a politician giving a speech. The speech is heard by everyone who's there on the day. It's also reported in the newspapers, and you and I read it in the newspaper even though we weren't actually there on the day. Let me illustrate that. Here's the first circle of influence, which is people I know. The second circle is people you know, and that blank oval in the middle is, of course, the overlap between my circle of friends and business associates and yours. But here's the big picture. Between the both of us, there are also a large number of people who are our connections, but are not necessarily known to the other party. And they themselves have their connections, which are not known to either of us. And so you end up with this access to a larger circle of influence than you or I can individually control. And that's one of the reasons why the word viral is sometimes used to describe social media marketing. If an idea is worth spreading, people mention it to other people. And as a consequence, if they mention it in a social media sphere, lots of other people get to hear about it. So how does social media work? Over 10 years ago, a very influential book was published called The Clue Train Manifesto. And I've put a link in there to the whole book. It's available online, or you can buy a print copy of it. One of the key tenets of the book is that markets are conversations. If you think back to the medieval marketplace where you and I might have been growing vegetables and bringing it into town to sell, we met our customers face to face and we spoke with them. And the marketplace was a venue to facilitate dialogue. One of the things about the internet is it has brought the opportunity to have a conversation back to the forefront of business. And as a consequence, every business in the world nowadays has the potential to be discussed in public. Just think about that for a moment. And I hope you've got a pen and paper handy, because that's one thing that I would like you to write down. Is our business being discussed in public? Because if it is, you want to know about it. So, how does our business work? You're professional advisors, I'm a professional advisor. Our areas of expertise are a little different, but the way we go about our business is broadly similar. We talk with prospective clients. We discuss their needs. We showcase our skills and expertise. They decide to hire us, and we collaborate to execute work on behalf of the client. Now, I've written the words Metcalfe's Law here, and I want to read an extract from the Clue Train Manifesto from that link at the top of the page, which talks about markets being conversations, because it explains why a network is such a powerful asset to a business. Metcalfe's Law is a famous axiom of the computer industry. It states that the value of a network increases as the square of the number of users connected to it. Connections multiply value exponentially. This is also true for conversations on networked markets. In fact, as the network gets larger, it also gets smarter. The Clue Train corollary to this is the level of knowledge on a network increases as the square of the number of users multiplied by the volume of conversation. So in market conversations, it's far easier to learn the truth about the products which are being pumped, about the promises that are being made, and about the people who are making these promises. Networked markets are not only smart markets, they're also equipped to get much smarter, much faster than business as usual. And so if there is a conversation going on about you or your business or your partners, and you're not party to that conversation, how does that make you feel? It's a little bit like gossip in the pub. If you are part of it, you feel in the know and you can contribute to the discussion, positively or negatively. But if you're not part of it, or you're ignorant of the conversation going on, what does that mean for your business? I recommend you all write down now the Clue Train Manifesto. It's a short book, and I do commend it to you. I suggest everybody listening today downloads a copy and reads it. Now on to the big question. Should our firm use social media? As I've said, if you're not part of this conversation online, you definitely won't be part of the solution. And if someone is misrepresenting you, I bet you want to be part of the solution. So where are people having conversations online? Let's think about some of the places that you're almost certainly already very familiar with. Trade magazines. We all get email and print magazines from the Institute of Accountants, from other professional bodies, and in there there's always a letters to the editors page. So discussions happen there. Stuff.co.nz here in New Zealand is a very influential website. It mainly focuses on news and local news, but people have discussions around what it is that they publish. About networking events, I've suggested Chamber of Commerce meetings, but I'm sure you all have a range of different organisations locally to you where you can meet and network with clients and prospective clients. But what about online? How do you find out where your clients and your prospective clients are having discussions? You've got to decide, basically, if social media is right for you. It is not right for everyone, and I'm not going to be prescriptive in that regard. But let's take a look. Are your clients on social media networks? I'd like you to write down now your top 3 clients that you personally work for, or if you're a marketing manager in a firm, the top 3 clients of the firm. I'm sure you know the names of their businesses. And an action for you to take after this morning is to go and look at those clients' websites. I strongly suspect that most of them will have a website, and on the website, usually at the very top or the very bottom, which is colloquially called the header or the footer, you may find little icons representing social media websites and the pages that those firms are using on those sites. Draw up a grid where on the left-hand side you list your clients, and across the top you list or tick the boxes for the different social media sites that they're on. You'll get to know the symbols for each of the sites quite soon. But if your clients and firms who are like your clients are on social media, you should be too. Or basically you risk losing out and missing those conversations. Let me give you a real example. Last week, I used my social media network to ask a question. Where can I find a good accountant? Now, I hope you're all sitting up in your chairs and going, me, pick me, I'm a good accountant. The picture on the screen here is my Twitter homepage. At 2:10 in the afternoon, I put this tweet at the top of the page. You can see it there. It says, advice needed, : where can I find a good accountant? Now, I let that run. I didn't do much to promote it. I just put it out there to my network. If you look at the numbers that are above that text, it says following 2,276, followers 2,406. So potentially there are 2,406 people out there who may have seen that message. Want to see the results? By 5:30, I had a Twitter reply from someone who is called Oars, and they wrote to me and they said, Roy Shepherd, shepherdaccountant.co.nz, good accountant, excellent. He also bothered to tell me that this man is an ex-rower. Now, Oars and I share a common sport, rowing. And by mentioning that Roy used to row, and because he knows that I row, he gave us a common basis for understanding. Isn't that nice? It's just like introducing one friend to another friend, saying you two should get on because you have this in common. And of course we all know that for business associations and introductions, that makes the introduction much more attractive to both parties. Now at the bottom of the page, you can see the LinkedIn logo, which is the words in a blue square. The same question that I put on Twitter also appeared on my LinkedIn account. That's because I have the two of them connected, so that information from one feeds to the other. I know that different people pay attention to different social media websites in my network, and so I allow this to happen. In the same time frame, a man called François Bondiguel immediately replied and said, you should talk to Simon Manawoiti. He is awesome. How nice is that? And if you notice, the name Simon Manawoiti is underlined and is in blue text. That means it's a hyperlink. And if I clicked on it, it would take me through to his LinkedIn profile page so that I could see who he was. And in a complete coincidence, but a genuine follow-through to this, Simon came into our offices and we had a talk on Xero tips and tricks and how to get the most out of Xero plugins 3 days after this. And so not only had I been introduced to him by a mutual acquaintance, I then, by coincidence, got to meet him face to face. So, a trivial example, and it was one that I forced because I wanted an example to show you today. But there's a simple 2 different social networks, 2 different people within my networks who took time out to help me with their advice in looking for an accountant. That's the sort of conversation that I'm talking about that might help you. Now, what about social media and its impact? Before you launch into getting enthusiastic and using it for your own firm, I'm sure you want to know whether or not it has any benefit or relevance to firms who already use it. The picture on the screen now is taken from a software package called Google Analytics. If you're not familiar with it, please write it down. The website address is analytics.google.com. It's a free piece of software that you can put onto your company's website, and it tracks the number of clicks that come to the website and what people do when they're on your website. Now, this page shows the different places that visitors to this tax accountant's website, where they came from and how many people came from each place. So if you look at the list, it's numbered 1 to 10. The first one says direct. What that means is that these people, 94 of them, typed in their URL themselves into either a search or into their browser address bar at the top of the page. Now below it, you get to number 5, which says lnkd.in, which is short for LinkedIn, and it says /referral. So 8 people came through to this business's website as a result of what he had published on LinkedIn. Number 8 on the list is another different variant of LinkedIn sending referrals. Now, one of these is from people who are using computers, desktop computers, and the other is mobile, so people who are using LinkedIn and reading it on their mobile phones. But they're both the same website, LinkedIn. 8 people came from the first referral, which was 3.39% of the total visits that month, and 2 people came from the other one. Just out of interest, number 4 on the list is a personal financial services website here in New Zealand called interest.co.nz, and at the bottom of the list, number 10, someone came to their website as a result of an article written on my own business website. And above that is Attained, which is one of the accountancy professional organisations here. So, for a small firm, specialist tax accountant, who had 236 visitors to his website last month, 10 of them came as a result of social media. That's not bad. And once someone has come to your website, they have the opportunity, of course, to do things, to learn more about your business and potentially to become a client. Just looking at the other columns on this page, the third column says percentage of new sessions, which means people who've never visited the site before, and all of those LinkedIn ones, it says 100%, they're all new visitors. The bounce rate, which is the penultimate column, is a recording of the number of visitors who only look at a single page. It's really important for a website that it draws the visitor in to browse, to look at multiple pages. If they only look at a single page and then go away again, it's an opportunity lost for the business. And so, if you look at the ones that I've circled in red, all of the people who came from these referrals looked at more than one page. In fact, they looked at 2 pages each. Well, that's not brilliant, but it's not bad. So, just as a reflection, social media being used by this accountancy firm who have been on social for about 8 months. And this is the sort of traffic that they've got. Now let's move on to how to set up social media accounts. Get that pen and paper ready. First thing, and possibly the most important, is to decide on a name. A lot of firms have got the names of the partners listed as part of the business name. Sometimes they use short forms. So it's really important that you're consistent. If you're going to call yourself the full proper name of the business, including perhaps limited, or perhaps the name of the city, if you're a multi-site firm, you might want to say, we're Murray's, brackets Brisbane, so that people don't confuse you with the Sydney office. The key is consistency here. Whatever you decide, you've got to stick with, and it helps if it's the same in lots of different places. Now, as far as which social media sites to choose, go back to that earlier research we talked about. You're going to go and look at your top 3 clients and which social media sites they use. In fact, you could extend that and look at your top 20 clients. It's a slightly better feeling for whether or not this is a priority for your clientele. But I recommend you prioritise the social media sites that your clients use on the basis that if your current clients are using it, your prospective clients are highly likely to be businesses and individuals that are similar to your current clients, and that's the logic. Now, to get started, I've listed out the URLs of the 3 principal business social media sites that we're going to talk about today: LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. There is a 4th one which I've chosen not to cover but is highly recommended, which is Google+. So the last thing you need to get ready is to have your business logo ready in a JPEG format. Do check how large images of logos needs to be on social, because some of them are square, some are circular, and they have different dimensions. So there's a little bit of work there to resize your image to make sure that it's readable in a small format. If you have a particularly long name that when you normally print it comes across the screen as a large, long rectangle, you may want to consider making a shortened form of it, perhaps just using your initials, or perhaps an icon, which might be a symbol, which is also perhaps in your brand identity, in your logo. There are lots of different options, but we can give you a helping hand with that if you need. Let's look at that first one now. If you go to the website linkedin.com, you'll see a page that looks like this. If you're not already a member, this is their first screen. And as it says, join the world's largest professional network. Get started. It's free. Now, LinkedIn is a professional CV sharing network. It was always set up for business people and is designed for business-related conversations. There are 2 types of page inside LinkedIn. One is individual and the other is for a company. And as I put on this slide, to make a LinkedIn company page, you first have to create a personal page. Now, if you're already signed in, on the top line you can see they put email address and password and a sign-in box. It's all greyed out at the moment because LinkedIn doesn't yet know if you're actually a member or not. If you're not, go to the middle part of the screen and fill in your first and last name and your email address and create a password for yourself. If you're not quite ready for that, have a little browse around and research the site. I've circled 2 more boxes at the bottom of the page. The first one says find a colleague, where you can just type in someone's name. I do commend you to find somebody or choose someone with as unusual a name as possible, because guess what, there are an awful lot of John Smiths out there and not very many Rebecca Caroes. And lastly, you can browse members by country. This is quite helpful. In fact, you can go more detailed than country. You can go down to individual cities. And certainly, if you're well known in your city or town, you may well be able to look there and see whether or not people you already know are using LinkedIn. Now, before creating a LinkedIn company page, do first check that there isn't one already. I have clients who have created pages only to find that it's a duplicate and that some enthusiastic person in the past had created a page for the firm in order to reserve the name, but then had done nothing about it and the firm had forgotten that it existed. So first, just do a search to check that your firm isn't already there. Additionally, if you're a large organisation, LinkedIn, in order to encourage more firms to join and to create pages, actually started to try and become kind of yellow pages or white pages by adding on firms and businesses that they researched themselves and including the directory listings that they found for firms. If that is the case, it has a hyperlink in it that says claim this listing, and you can click that and tell LinkedIn that it's your business and that you would like to take over the management of that listing. While you're doing your search, check all versions of your business name, particularly if you've got a short name, a short form, concatenation of two initials of different surnames, and so on. Just check that there aren't lots of different variations there. And the rather long URL at the bottom is a very detailed help page from inside LinkedIn that tells you exactly how to add a company page. Just print it out. It's extremely clear and gives you step-by-step guidance about what to do. So that's the beginning of how to create a page on LinkedIn for your firm. Now let's take a look at Facebook. Again, Facebook is not for everybody, but setting that reservation aside, it has a layout on its first page that's very similar to the one we've just looked at for LinkedIn. As you can see at the very top, it invites you to log in if you already have a profile, or to sign up, which is in the middle of the page. And at the bottom, I've circled in red a link that says create a page for a celebrity, a band, or a business. Now, this is the page that it takes you to when you click on create a brand or business page. On the left, you can see there are 6 large boxes where Facebook is suggesting different types of page. If you're a local business, if you're a company or an organisation, a brand or product, a cause, some form of entertainment, or an artist or a band or a public figure. Pick the one that's best suited to you. And when you click on it, I clicked the company, organisation or institution. It then brings up the image on the right, where it asks you to choose a category and then to type in the company name. Remember to use the pre-agreed name that will be the same in every social media site. When you pick the category, it has a rather long drop-down list, but you'll quickly find the one that's best suited for you. And lastly, let's look at Twitter. Twitter is the social media site where all updates are very short, 140 characters or less. Again, its sign-up is very similar to the others because they found that these are templates that people now recognise. You can sign in at the top or at the bottom, you can sign up. Very straightforward, very much up to you. Now, you've got your social media accounts. So, what on earth are you going to write? Here are some questions which may help give you some clues. Have you got a newsletter for your business? I'm sure you do. The vast majority of accountancy firms have been writing newsletters very regularly for years. It probably has 2, 3, 4 or 5 articles every time you publish it. Guess what? every single one of those articles has the capability to be a piece of social media content. What about your staff news? One of the things that I think are really important for accounting firms, they often have very high-profile partners and utterly invisible staff. I think that's a shame. The personality of a business is made up of everybody who works there. And so writing about the individual team members and their particular news, whether that's the acquisition of qualifications or personal news about marriages maybe, or having children, or particular reasons to celebrate. Here are some other suggestions. Christmas is coming up. A lot of firms are going to be closed for more than just the statutory days. You could publish your firm's closure date. You can answer questions as well. Questions are a very, very good way of getting people to see the areas that you're expert in, but also to showcase what you can do to help people. Because quite often, if one person has got a question, there'll be other people like them also wanting the answer. Then you can showcase your expertise. If you've got a particular client and you've done something that is regular and routine and successful for them, you can write about it, a little case study, for example. And the last two lines are some other considerations that you'll need to discuss internally. Firstly, decide on the frequency of updates that you're going to do. If your newsletter is monthly and you have, say, 4 articles in it, does that mean that you're going to have 1 article per week? It might be quite considerable. Read the diary plan through the year. This is the best way of enabling your social media to be kept current and for internal visibility, so that anyone in the firm can see what's planned to come up and what's already happened, because you don't want to repeat yourself too often. And also think about the time of day. When are your clients or prospects using social media? I think a lot of people look at it at lunchtime when they're having a break from their work, and they sit and eat their lunch, pick up their phones and flick through social media. So that's some ideas for you in terms of what you might write. But here are some of the things you should have done first. You need to decide who in the firm is going to monitor social media sites. My recommendation is that it should be a partner plus 1 or 2 staff, the partner with the oversight and the staff members with the day-to-day responsibility. When you register for these sites, you need an email address to register. It may be beneficial to have a single email address which is used all websites. I do not recommend you choose admin@firm or info@firm, partly because they're too obvious and too open for being hacked. Choose an individual's email address, but maybe give them a second one that they only use for social media, or make up a firm-wide one so that many members of staff have the capability to use it. You need to also discuss what information is or is not appropriate to share. Some firms are very relaxed, for example, about staff news. You might be comfortable writing about the staff five-a-side football team. Other firms are not. And so agreeing in advance the boundaries of what is and is not acceptable is really important. And lastly, you need to decide whose job is maintaining your social media presence. My recommendations here are that you pick somebody who wants to do it, and it actually doesn't matter what their other job in the firm is. So as long as they have the enthusiasm for using social media, you're far more likely to get a good outcome than foisting it onto somebody who is reluctant and then ends up feeling unsupported and put upon. it is an all or nothing decision. So before you launch, think about the potential downside here. What will clients think if they find the firm listed somewhere on social, but there's no activity, either nothing or it's dated months ago? What would they think if one of your partners is on social, but they've got no activity under their listing as an individual? That's an important scenario that you need to discuss, because if you commit to doing it, you do need to persist and to continue. So resources are needed, time and money, to ensure that it happens. But having been rather severe about that, I do promise you that if you are persistent and diligent, you will get results. And there are lots of great people who can help you get the results you desire that fits in with your marketing and sales. Now let's talk about sharing. Do you remember those overlapping circles of influence that we talked about right at the very beginning? Getting you to read my stuff, this is reasonably easy if we know each other. But how do we get our contacts shared beyond our own immediate network? As I said in the first line, just posting messages up is like screaming in the middle of the forest. No one's going to hear you. So, you have to get noticed by other people. When you first join, of course, you're just there on your own. The first thing you need to do is to follow people who you actually already know. When you do that, you will start to see the content that they share appear in your newsfeed. When you go to each of these sites, it shows you not the things that you write, but the things that others have written. So the first rule of social is generosity. Share others' content first. Write that one down. It's really important. Then among your followers and collaborators, I suggest you create an inner circle. These are people who you know well enough to ask them if they can do you a favour. Partners and staff are an obvious group of people to put into the inner circle, but you may also have key clients who are very happy to support your efforts. Each of the people in the inner circle can set up automatic resharing of each other's content. This means that anything that they write, your social media account will automatically repost or reshare or retweet. And they can do the same for you. It's a kind of echo chamber for what you're writing about. This, of course, presumes that they're writing about things that are of interest to you and your clients and prospects. And that's a key criterion for picking the people in your inner circle. Now, you need to tell them in advance if you've got something important that you're about to share. Say you have your weekly newsletter article. Get in touch with them and tell them that it's which day and at what time it's going to happen so that they can be ready for it, particularly if it's an unusually good one or a particular message that you know you value and you want to get quite a lot of people reading. Now, a consideration of different times of day. Who in your firm actually works 9 to 5? I'll bet you that there are people who actually start work at 8 and people who work through to 6 within your team. At what times of day do you actually read your private email or your private social media? Just take a note, because that will give you some clues, again, about when your clients and prospective clients might be doing the same. Now, there are no fixed answers here, particularly for business. And so you do need to experiment with publishing content at different times of the day and on different days of the week. Not everybody is online at the moment that you publish something, and even if they are, they may not be paying attention. And so, lastly, it pays to repeat yourself. When you publish a new article, you should obviously share it on social as it publishes, whatever the day and time you choose. But then I recommend that you repeatedly share it 1 day later, 3 days later, a week, a month later. Now those can be set up automatically so that once the content shares, it then flows from one to the other. And that gives you the opportunity to do those experiments with different times of day and different days of the week. In this way, your one article published in 1 week has the potential to create profile for your business across different social media channels over several days. And that means that it shouldn't be too onerous for a firm who's already writing that article for their newsletter to actually find that they've got content that is usable and can fit into a social media marketing communications plan. Let's have a look at some of the other things that you might want to write about. Now, in my business, our business bank is Kiwibank. And when I first started using Kiwibank, I of course used their online website and their payment options. Now, anyone who's familiar with it will recognize this top menu, which has all of the different activities that you can do with an online account. Pay and transfer is an obvious one. But the first time I had to pay GST, I made a mistake. I clicked on Saved Payees at the top of the list to try and pay the IRD, because I didn't notice that lower down in the list is a menu item called Pay Tax, and here Kiwibank has already set up the correct account settings for the IRD, and all you have to do is tell them what type of tax you're paying. Now, many of you listening will be shrugging your shoulders and going, but that's obvious, isn't it? Well, actually, it's not. And it obviously wasn't to me when I did this. And so you can write a short article explaining how to overcome this particular problem using all the different banks and their online payment methods. Because I bet you that if you do a search inside Google or whichever search engine you prefer to use and search for how to pay Australian tax online, there will be a dearth of answers and a multitude of people asking the question. I find the government websites incredibly complicated. They don't tend to make it easy. And I remember spending a long time searching for the account number to actually pay to once. Now, if your firm has written a comprehensive article with illustrations like the one I put up here that explains in a very straightforward way how to do this, guess what? When someone searches for it on Google, your answer will show up. And that brings me to another point. It's really important that you do not only write these things on social media. I'll tell you why. It's because you do not own the social media website. It is owned by Facebook, or it is owned by LinkedIn, or it is owned by Twitter. And as a result, you have to sign their terms and conditions of use in order to use it. What would happen to all of your expert answers and expert articles if, for some reason, tomorrow LinkedIn closed down, if their website disappeared? That list of articles, the long list of people who you know and are professionally connected to, would just evaporate, and a valuable business asset would no longer be available to you. For this reason, I always recommend that your social media starts with your website. You can use a news page or a blog page on your website to write these articles, even if you're going to put them in a newsletter as well, even if you're going to share them on social as well. The reason being You own your website. You control it, and if something goes wrong with it, you can put in place the backups and the expert support that's needed. And therefore, if you didn't come to the very first seminar that we did in this series, make a note now to go back to CCH and watch the video that we recorded a month ago. We talked about how to use your website as part of your marketing. Now, moving on. Here are the sorts of things that you can write about in addition. Think about questions and answers and articles. Some of them are evergreen. That means the advice doesn't change. You can ask me the advice today and it'll be the same if you ask it to me again in 3 months' time. Some of them, though, are very time-bound, so you've got to file your tax return by a particular date. If you tell me that after the date's passed, it's no good to me. Think about showcasing the skills and expertise in your firm. You might have a department that's dedicated to doing bookkeeping, one that does GST returns, another that does all of the rest of the compliance stuff. You may have expert outsourced finance directors. You might have tax expertise. Showcase all of those skills, even the most mundane. Showing off these simple things often start conversations, going back to my Kiwibank example. If you're looking for that exact example and you find the question answered on a particular firm's website, guess what? You might ask a question of the firm and get an answer, and then the firm can say, would you like us to help you? And of course that might become a new client. Mix up all the different things that you write about. Don't always do questions, don't always give advice. Have a plan, as I said. A monthly calendar or a week-by-week through the year calendar is a very good way of doing it. And a large number of websites actually have content management systems behind them that enable you to set up a calendar and forward plan news articles and blog posts without publishing them. Alternatively, just do a spreadsheet. Months of the year across the top of the page and topics down the left-hand side, or different social media sites down the left-hand side. If you haven't got one of those or would like a blank, just get in touch and I'll give you one. Here are some suggestions of other work-related advice that you might use. The slides that I'm doing today are being shared on a social media website called slideshare.com. SlideShare is owned by LinkedIn, and guess what? You will find these slides already on my LinkedIn profile because I uploaded them before I started talking. Training. How to do something. Do you showcase these things for your clients so some of them can do it themselves? They make expert articles. And tips and tricks, as I said before. Now, a little word about etiquette. Social media is a little bit like going to the pub. Nobody likes the bossy, pushy person who talks about himself the whole time. So, don't be pushy. Treat it as if you're trying to make friends with someone. Remember the last time you got to know someone new, or you meet a new client for the first time? What happens? Careful, friendly dialogue. Listening as well as talking. So, be generous and listen to others first. The exact same rules work on social media. Once you've got a series of people that you're following, some of them will follow you back, but it helps if you listen to them first. Here's a suggested ratio of talking. Reshare or retweet 70% of your content. So the people that you're already following, use what they're writing and reshare that to populate your news feed. Then, a 20% of the volume can be your commentary on top of what they've written. So if, for example, you read that I had put that Kiwibank how to pay GST piece of advice up, you could reshare it. Or you could write a comment on it and say, yes, but, and add something to the discussion so that a greater clarity is given and greater understanding by the reader. And lastly, about 10% of what you write should be things that you originate. So if you think about one article per week, that means that you have the opportunity to share 7 articles by other people and to comment on 2 of them. That gives you an idea. If you get a comment on something you've written, always reply and thank others for doing it. When you get a new follower, do the same, particularly when you're getting going, because you won't have many followers, and it then makes them notice you. It makes it clear to them that you are actively managing your account. It's very, very nice if someone does that, because then they know you've noticed what they've done. And equally, you hope that they'll do the same. If you end up with a wildly popular social media following, you may choose to automate some of this, but I don't really recommend it. The other thing is to take information that you share on one social media site, for example, LinkedIn, and then reuse it on other sites. So some of your 70% of activities on one site can be used to create original posts or reshares on Twitter or maybe on Facebook. And lastly, I've put a link up here from a very good website called ProBlogger, where they advise bloggers on how to get going. You don't need to worry about that, but it does have this useful social media etiquette guide, which was a blog post that they wrote. And it is a very, very good thing, worth printing out and sharing with your colleagues. Write that one down on your notes now. Now, Will also asked me to give an overview of some of the other social media channels that are out there. As I've already hinted, there are quite a lot, and they tend to congregate around 4 different genres. The first one I've listed here is video. I'm sure you've all heard of YouTube, but there are also social media sites called Vimeo, which are videos, and Vine, which are short 6-second long videos. Again, very shareable, possibly inappropriate for your own business, but well worth having a look at so that you become a little bit better informed about the social media scene for business. And you may find when you do your review of your clients' websites that they are using some of these sites. Now, audio. Listening to the radio, of course, preceded television, and audio, interestingly, is making a big comeback in social media. You've probably heard of podcasts, which are basically radio shows, but they may be broadcast live, but usually they're recorded and left for people to listen at their own time and when they're ready. And we do podcasts for some of our clients, and they're a very successful marketing tool. SoundCloud is a website where you can create essentially channels where people can listen to particular types of music, particular bits of information, particular radio shows. So the podcast that we create, for example, we broadcast through SoundCloud because SoundCloud has an audience. And iTunes is also a podcast network which a lot of people use. If anyone's interested in marketing podcasts, please drop me a line and I'll tell you the ones that we like listening to. What about pictures? Pictures are social shareable assets as well. Pinterest is a social media site that is entirely built around images. Instagram is the same, it's actually owned by Facebook. And Flickr is a photo sharing site that predated both of the others and is used by an awful lot of professional photographers as well. And of course then there are written social media channels. Blogs, which we've talked about, Tumblr, which is a blogging platform as well as being a social media site. And if you become well known on LinkedIn, you may be invited to blog on that platform. And I was very fortunate to be invited to blog on it. So if you go and look at my profile, which I'll show you the link later, you can see the blog posts that I've written on LinkedIn. Now, I won't let any opportunity go by without talking about measurement and analysis. Marketers may not be known for understanding numbers, but you have to do this. If you have a marketing team who doesn't do regular measurement and analysis, question their ability and go and find someone who can. You need to be good at arithmetic. You do not need to be good at statistics. So these are the things that I showed you earlier of different measurements that can be done. We also set short targets. So we had things like the number of followers that we want to grow each month as a regular metric that we use. We also like for our clients to see how much of the social media content that we create on their behalf gets reshared, that gets liked or gets favorited on the different sites. These are all indications that spending your money is getting you payback, and there's no point in doing any marketing unless you know it's delivering results. Now, pull that pen and paper towards yourself. These are the things that I would like you to do today. It won't take long, and it will mean that you'll be able to put what you've been learning just now into practice. Visit your clients' websites and go and list those who've got social profiles and list the different places where they've got their social profiles. Decide on a name for your firm which you can use on every social media site. Now, you may need to be a little bit creative here because it may be that your preferred name is already taken. Agree who is going to be in charge of social media for your firm. It does need to be one person, but of course they can be helped out by others. And then go and register your profile and upload your logo to each of the sites that you're going to choose to use. Now, I realise that today might be a little ambitious if you are not the decision maker in the firm and you need to get partnership authorisation to do these things. So what I'd like you to do is, if that is the case, add a social media discussion to the next partners meeting agenda. If you need a helping hand with discussing the opportunity and why your firm should look at it, invite me to come on board and answer questions from the partners by telephone. I'm happy to do this for each of you. Here's the offer that I'm going to make to you. Go to the page at the top, which I've listed, which is called Accountant Resources. On there, you'll see all of the slides that I've used this morning. You can download these and reshare them and use them yourselves. You'll also find the slides from the previous webinar that Will mentioned, and you will in future find the slides for the next one. Now, if you would also like to buy a consultation with us, we can help you get started. A modest fee over the phone. We'll answer all your questions. We'll give you coaching on how to get started, answer any particular issues that arise, for example, if someone's already taken your preferred name. And we'll coach the whole of your social media team. So if you made it a conference call, you could all benefit. We will give you our top 3 recommendations of what your firm can do over the next month in its social media. And if you're not fully satisfied, I guarantee you a full refund. Now that fee would be what you'd pay us if we came to your partners meeting on the phone, as I mentioned earlier. Now, enough of the sales pitch. How can I help you? Let's connect. If you're on LinkedIn or on Twitter, please come and find me. Here's my email address, but if you search for my name on LinkedIn, you'll find me. Send an invite and let's connect. And then you'll see some of the things that I write about for my firm, Creative Agency Secrets. Or you can give me a ring if you want. My phone number's on the screen, as is my Twitter ID. Will, what have we got in terms of questions?
We've had a number of questions around the Google Plus network, which you mentioned earlier, and why that is so important.
Let me give a quick answer. The reason Google Plus is so important is because Google is the search engine of choice for most people. As a result, it prioritizes information that is shared on the Google social media network, which is called Google Plus. So if one of your firm's marketing strategies is to appear in natural search when people type things into Google and are looking for answers or questions, and you want to appear there, I strongly recommend that you create a Google Plus profile and use that as part of your social media marketing plan.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our time today, Rebecca, so we'll just leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. We'll be sending out the details of this webinar in the follow-up email with links to the slides, the recording, and any of those URLs that Rebecca's mentioned today. and hopefully we will see you next Monday at the next webinar on utilising social media in your firm. Thank you and have a good day. Thank you, Rebecca.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Will.